we are doing a collaboration with BobaTalks.com, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that is in very shortly. And this is a guide to navigating the STEM world, and we're so excited to have our panelists and moderator here. So the schedule, we're just going to do an intro, a moderated conversation, and then if there are any audience questions, we will also have that. So the moderator for today is LinkedIn top voice Morgan Young, who is also the myNetworkHer advisor, which is really exciting. She is a student, a university student, and also a 5-time Disney intern, among many other things. Our panelists are Dr. Greetchen Díaz-Muñoz, who is a myNetworkHer mentor, and you can actually book her on myNetworkHer.org. She is a scientist and educator. And we have Christina Warmbrunn, who is a BobaTalks mentor, and she is the senior program manager at Riot Games. Both have a long history of increasing diversity in the STEM world and understanding how to navigate the very male-dominant industry. What is myNetworkHer? It is basically a platform in which high schoolers, gender marginalized high schoolers, can easily book STEM professionals and university students, also a part of gender marginalized communities, for mentorship. At myNetworkHer.org, you can become a mentee and book a multitude of different mentors, or you can become a mentor where you can educate and teach high schoolers about your experience and guide them. And BobaTalks.com is also very similar to myNetworkHer. It's a place in which people are able to book mentors, not only high school students, and understand and learn from people who have more experience than them in different categories. All right, so I think that we can get started now. Morgan?
All right, I guess that's my cue. Question for both of our panelists for today. Can you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself and maybe a little bit about your identity as a woman in STEM?
Should I start?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and share a little bit of me. So I'm Greetchen Díaz, and I'm a scientist and educator, and I'm also advocate for women and girls in STEM. I'm first generation, so I'm the first one in my family to have a PhD degree. And I also the first one in many other settings, like when I was doing my PhD, remember to be the only one in many spaces, like the only Latina presenting in specific meetings and things like that. So that's part of the experience that I share with also the students, and that made me also to learn a lot of what I know as today. I work for a nonprofit organization. I left the lab. I'm not doing research, but I did a lot of research before. And I'm a program director at the nonprofit organization Ciencia Puerto Rico, or Science Puerto Rico. And there, I'm the director of the science education program. And what we do is that we kind of facilitate that volunteers and people around the world that is interested in science and Puerto Rico are able to promote science in the island by participating in different activities for students, for teachers, for families too. So that's the kind of work that I do. I've been navigating the nonprofit world for many years, and that's another experience that I share with students that is not normally the usual path for scientists. So very happy to be here.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's so wonderful getting to hear more about your story as well, Greetchen. That's like fantastic. And it's so awesome that you were also like a first gen student. That's amazing. And a PhD at that. That's so impressive. So yeah, hi everybody. Super happy to be here. I'm Christina Warmbrunn. I'm a senior program manager at Riot Games. And if you're not super familiar with Riot Games, we work on things like Arcane, which is on Netflix that you might have seen. We also have League of Legends, Valorant, TFT. We just dropped a new game mode on League of Legends. So lots of cool, exciting stuff. Yeah, I'm a huge gamer. So this was my dream company. I always wanted to work in the gaming industry, but I didn't really see a path forward since I wasn't really into engineering. I wasn't really into the arts. So I didn't really know if there would be a place long-term for me in the gaming industry. But I'm happy to report that there is a space for you if you're really into organization, if you're really into optimizing things, making things better, easier for folks moving forward, program management might be a super valuable path for you. And so my role as a program manager at Riot means that I get to sort of act as like a connection between all the different technology teams at Riot to really amplify and broadcast their work internally. And I do that in a lot of different ways. We have a video series that I work on internally. I'm actually currently working on our conference strategy and approach for Afrotech, which will be this upcoming November. So lots of really exciting and awesome things that I get to work on. So videos, podcasts, newsletters, all sorts of cool things internally to really amplify the work that our different types of engineering and game teams do, just to spread the knowledge and spread the awareness. And it's really awesome. And then I also really try to dedicate a lot of my time to outreach and DEI mentorship efforts. So things like this. And it's something that I'm really passionate about. And I'm really grateful to be in a workspace where we prioritize DEI and mentorship. And we're super inclusive and understanding of folks who want to dedicate additional time to mentorship, whether it's at work or outside of it. But yeah, I came from the fintech space and now I'm here in gaming.
Amazing. I loved hearing about both of your backgrounds. Both of you are so incredibly accomplished. So again, that's why we're very honored to have you here. Next question. This is for Christina. So you kind of just touched on it, and actually you kind of leading us into our next questions. But obviously you have not always been in the game industry. So what made you decide to shift from fintech to games? Obviously you did say that you've always been a gamer, so you've always had a passion for it. But what was that thing that really gave you the push? And moreover, what I'm curious to know is what made you realize that shifting into gaming was a possibility for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think I always knew that there was an option for me to explore a career path in gaming. I just didn't exactly know what was the right opportunity or what the right slot would be for me, because I didn't really feel like I wanted to be an engineer. I didn't really feel like I had the creative aptitude to be an excellent artist or a designer. So I wasn't really sure where I fit in. And honestly, it didn't really become clear to me what that path would be until I became a program manager at my previous company. And so I didn't ever plan to be a program manager. I was an English major in undergrad. I was really focused on potentially going actually into the PhD track. I was very, very interested in academics and not really super thinking through or being necessarily mindful of like what corporate career I wanted. I was definitely thinking about writing and getting a PhD. I was not really thinking about anything in terms of the work experience. And I actually got into a graduate school program in England, but unfortunately COVID happened. And so that meant that I would not be able to travel abroad to go to a master's program. And so that kind of kicked it into gear of like, I need to figure out a job in the interim, or I need to keep this internship that I have going a little bit longer than I thought, because kind of have to pivot. And so I had never heard of program management before becoming a program manager. It's not really, I think, a career that's super visible. I think mostly because a lot of the work that program managers do is behind the scenes, and it's not always the first thing people think about when you're at an event or at a conference. You're kind of just attending it. You're not really maybe thinking through like, how did they get the marketing and who approved the socials and how did they actually get the catering for this really cool event space? Like, you're not always thinking of that, but that's usually a program manager is doing that. So it was actually something that a recruiter at my previous company mentioned. They said, hey, you're really organized. Everyone always says this about you in your internship. Would you be interested in exploring like a program manager path? I think you could be a really good fit for it. So at the time I was kind of like, this isn't tech and this is a program manager and I know nothing about this. So I don't know how skilled I'll be at it, but it really, with that motivation from the recruiter and also like some of my good mentors and colleagues at the time really pushed me into like exploring it more seriously. And so I did. And that was sort of when I started to realize like, oh, there are people in gaming industries who have to wrangle the engineering teams or have to make sure they deliver the skins or the new products on time. There's like a whole avenue of people who just do this in the gaming space. So ultimately, I would say it was really a combination of like one, figuring out the niche and the specific avenue of which I wanted to go down. And then also as well, really just feeling like there could be that place for me in gaming. And it became a bit more obvious as I advanced down my career and I became a program manager from an associate level. Then I started to see, oh, there's senior program manager roles, there's program manager roles available for folks in the gaming industry. And so that really just gave me the push, was seeing that, getting that encouragement from mentors and folks around me, and honestly just being passionate about it because I love helping people and making things better where I can. So it's just kind of a natural fit for me.
That's awesome, Christina. And I can totally relate to that. I feel like COVID, especially for those of us that were like, I started college during the pandemic. So I feel like it also shaped a lot of my college decisions as well as my career decisions. So I think that was the case for a lot of people. It really made us rethink and
Yeah.
maybe pivot a lot.
Yeah.
I also had a lot of friends who were trying to study abroad that semester. So I totally get it.
Yeah.
So now moving over to Greetchen, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into biology and then about some of your work as the director of Ciencia Puerto Rico?
Sure. So yeah, so actually biology is a very amazing discipline that have a lot, right? It's very broad. I was specifically when doing microbiology and cell biology for my PhD and my research. But the way that I started was actually when I was in high school. I was thinking that I would be an astronomer. That was my discipline, the thing that I dream of. And at some point, I met biology, I learned biology, and I was amazed by biology and everything. And then I left astronomy for kind of like a hobby thing, you know, something that you like. But then I preferred to apply to a college degree in biology. So I have a bachelor and a master's in biology. And then I decided to, you know, go more specific to the molecular biology, cell biology world. And it was in part, I was very motivated by fungi. When I was in Puerto Rico, I was doing research, studying diversity of fungi in extreme environments. And actually, that is kind of related to astronomy because there's a discipline that is called astrobiology that is dedicated to study organisms in extreme environments because, you know, they are maybe analogs to places out of the Earth. And when I found that was so amazing, like a way to combine these two things that I like a lot. And I decided to then, I said, I will be the molecular fungal scientist in Puerto Rico, something like that, you know, those very specific combinations. So I decided to apply for a PhD degree in molecular, cellular, and developmental biology. I went to Ohio State to do that. And there, once I was there, I kind of moved through the biomedical area. I was doing what we call basic biology. So in basic biology, what you do is that you kind of answer fundamental questions of science. And from there, other kind of scientists that are more what they call translational sciences and things like applied sciences, then they try to get that information and use to develop things like treatments, these you know, medicines and stuff like that. So I was more a basic biologist, and I worked with a fungi that it was a yeast cell. And the funny thing is that I don't like to work with animals. I mean, that's not for me. And yeast cells, you can freeze them, you can go to vacation, come back, you know, it was my thing. So that's what I did. And I was studying specifically protein transport in the cell. And one of the things, if the girls don't know, is that we used to use what we call genetic models. They serve because many of these organisms, even if you don't believe, they share a lot of genes that are very similar to our genes. And we can make those studies and kind of know how our cells also work. So in my case, it was a great experience working with the yeast work, because also there's a lot of Nobel Prizes that their first work was with yeast work, because they were answering fundamental questions. And that's what usually the Nobel Prizes acknowledge, right? Those fundamental questions that open other fields and things like that. So I love basic biology, basic science a lot. But at some point, when I was doing my PhD, I was also a volunteer. I have a kind of double life as a scientist, but also as a volunteer at Ciencia Puerto Rico. And from there, I did everything. I managed social networks. I wrote blogs. I did everything that you can do for a website. By the moment that we founded Ciencia Puerto Rico was in 2006 to 2007. And it was a network for scientists that are interest scientists from Puerto Rico. And that was kind of revolutionary for that at that moment, because at that moment, even Facebook was not well known. And we already in Puerto Rico have a social network for scientists by that time. Now it's kind of for granted, but it was not by that time. So we started to connect people from all the world that were interested in science in Puerto Rico. Now it is scientists, engineers, students, teachers, and the public. And we are together to, doing initiatives for Puerto Rico and beyond. And there, what I do is, as I mentioned before, is to create different programs that are for teachers, that are for students. In my case, since Puerto Rico have other programs that I don't lead. But the main things that we use all the time the volunteers as people that facilitate. They are mentors or they're content creators. They do something. And in that way, what we are doing is connecting people and engaging people with the promotion of science in the island. It doesn't matter where they are located in the world, okay? The other thing that we do that is very in our DNA, talking about biology, is that we always use culturally relevant content and resources. It's very important for us. Everything that we develop has to show and highlight the experiences and the culture of the people that are doing the job. And obviously is the culture and the experiences of the people that we serve. And that's part of the very important work that we do, trying to highlight Puerto Rican scientists, Latino scientists, their experiences, and then in that way, using that to motivate the young, the students, and even teachers and people to get more interested in science and technology.
Amazing. Awesome. So this is a question aimed at both of you, and whoever wants to take it, you can go first. So what have your experiences been like as a person who is part of a marginalized community in STEM?
You want to start, Christina?
Yeah, sure. I was trying to think of a good response. I was wondering if you were going to beat me. Wow. I mean, I think it's tough because obviously everyone has different experiences. I think it's complicated, at least for me, I would say, because I'm also a queer person and I'm also a Black woman. And so those are things that are already quite heavily marginalized in just any field in general, but particularly in STEM, it's very prevalent. And you often will see like, oh, I'm the only Black woman in this type of role in the whole company. Like that's a very common experience I've had in the previous places I've worked where I've been the only one. And it doesn't always feel good sometimes to be the only one of something, because it can feel like a little lacking, or maybe that there is difficulties in terms of like gaining or ensuring that there's that level of diversity at all levels, not just in certain leadership roles or in certain types of roles, but just across the board. So I will say, at least for me personally, it's definitely a journey. I think in my first role, I was actually the only Black woman in like a associate program manager and program manager role at that time, like across like a floor or like business area of like 1,000 people. I was like the only one in that role. And it really does, it can impact you, absolutely. And I think for me, what was really important was finding mentors and actually finding people who had a similar identity to me that I could talk to and I could confide and I could communicate how I felt in a way that was not destructive, but just cathartic almost. Like, hey, I'm really overwhelmed, or I feel really scared when I speak up in meetings. I'm the only Black person and I'm not sure how people will interpret what I'm saying, if they'll see it as aggressive or negative. And so it was really important for me. I think throughout my career, I've had a lot of amazing Black women mentors, and they have really helped me feel confident and comfortable in who I am, so that even if sometimes I am the only one in the room, I can still be confident and still be proud of who I am and my identity. Obviously, it's not right when you are the only one in the room. It's definitely a difficult burden to carry. I don't want to diminish that, but it really has helped make my journey a lot easier, because I've had Black women who are in even completely different disciplines than me. I've had a lot of Black women who are my mentors, who are in InfoSec, who are in all sorts of different business areas. And they've been valuable mentors to me just because they're excellent leaders. And they don't always have to have the exact same job title as me in order for me to learn and grow from them. But yeah, it's definitely been a difficult journey. So I highly recommend like finding your group of people, whether it's people with different identities than you who overlap in some way, similar backgrounds, similar upbringing, similar cultures, similar race, like all of that can really help you build community and comfort when you do feel like you are the only one, or if you are actually the only one in the room.
Yeah, very similar. I mean, I wanted to talk about two different experiences. One is when I was in Puerto Rico as a woman, right? I mean, we live in a system that is a patriarchal system. And in Puerto Rico, even we have more parity in Puerto Rico actually than in many states and in the United States in general. We have more women in the classrooms. But when you go kind of up, like in the boards, like in the leadership positions, then you start to see again the differences and the gaps. But as a woman in Puerto Rico, I saw a lot of things that were not correct. Like I really had that experience of, feel different because I was a woman in science. And I am sure that it's still there. And in the years that I was in the bachelor degree, doing my master, I have different experiences that kind of make me feel uncomfortable in where I was. Okay, that's one thing. I thought that was it. But when I went to the United States to do my PhD, I was a Latina in STEM, right? And that's different, especially because of the many bias. First, that many people think Latinos are just the same. I mean, everybody's homogeneous, and we are very different countries and people that speak Spanish and have many different experiences. Second is that we Latina, maybe maybe other cultures have a lot of colorful, a lot of, things that are from our culture. And unfortunately, for some people, that kind of thing that is very own kind of interfere with the science and the thing for them. And it shouldn't be like that, right? But for example, I have the experience many times, and this is very subjective, but there was people that thought I was beautiful, but I can be smart because I was beautiful or have some kind of sexiness or something like that. And these kind of things, I always feel and heard these kind of comments that were related to that. The way I walk, the way I have my clothes. One of the things that happened to me when I was in Ohio is that I started unconsciously changing all the clothing that I have, the colors and everything, to something more just monochromatic or something like that, because I was feeling that that was something distracting or something like that. Later on, I learned it doesn't matter, but it's something that happened and it shouldn't be like that, right? And apparently for STEM is not for Latinos when I was there, and there was very few Latinos when I was at Ohio State in the programs. I think that improved. And when I went to the meetings, one of the things that happened is that I went always to these very specific meetings like protein transport, this, and they were so small, those communities. They were great because you get, a lot of expertise and feedback in terms of science, but there was no Latinos, no men and no women Latinos. And I was feeling so lonely. Of course, I'm a person that like to know people from all the different cultures. That was not the problem. The problem is that you feel alone anyways, because you don't see people like you in your field. So I have these two main experiences. I actually have a colleague in the lab that, said to me words that I will not repeat, but they were offensive, like I had that experience. Unfortunately, I have a great woman mentor that when I communicate this to her, she did something for me. I mean, she stepped up. And I want to say that to the students. I mean, at this point, it doesn't matter if you're Black, white. I mean, you will always, if you're a woman, you will suffer some kind of this. If you're Black, you will. If you're Latina, if you're from Asia, there are different things because there's bias everywhere, right? And we have our own biases. But what I want to tell them is that you have to always speak up, find your person. If you find your group, as Christina mentioned, but at least a person, if you don't have a group yet, a person that you can tell what is happening to you, that can give you a contact, that can give you, some kind of words for you. Don't be alone and don't keep that with you. You have to speak up and you have to say if something like that happened to you, because it has to be addressed somehow. Okay, so that's but that's the kind of experiences that I have.
That was beautifully articulated. And I cannot emphasize enough, that's kind of why we're here. I think you both mentioned mentors, and that's why we're both here, right? Or why we're all here is because of mentorship. So going off of that then, what has mentorship, and this is not like a, definition type thing, but in your experiences with your mentor, what does mentorship look like to you? What does it entail?
I will start now. For me, mentors are everything. It's important to understand that you have to have mentors all your life for different things. You'll have a group of mentors or a mentor in this stage, but in the future, then they may change. You may maintain some relations, but they could change. That's okay, because you are also changing in your careers and you have different needs and different experiences. But it's important for me, a mentor is everything. I mean, I believe that I'm here in this privileged position at this point because of my mentors, because of the people that were my company from when I was at the school, when I was a curious little girl to now. And sometimes your mentors start to be a teacher because teachers have a role and a function, but they could be also a mentor. It could be a member of your community. It could be a colleague. It could be, and it doesn't matter your age. Even when you're a senior, when you will be a senior scientist or senior whatever, you'll always have something to learn from someone. And I think for me, mentors are those people that always have something to teach you, but they will develop that relationship, right? It's not something quick. It's something that you develop, that you maintain for some time, and that actually is beneficial in both ways, because even if you obtain something from them, they will learn a lot from you. So that's why for me it's so important to be a mentor, as everything, I mean, all the times that I can do this, but also to maintain my network and my support group that includes mentors.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gretchen said it perfectly, honestly. I mean, I think you absolutely need a mentor for different seasons and different stages of your life where you're at. I mean, I had mentors from when I was an intern, and I still have a mentor now, and I'm a senior level program manager. So I don't think you ever can like outgrow in terms of like having a mentor. You might outgrow a particular mentor. Like maybe you had a mentor from when you were an intern and they helped you navigate, the start of your early career, and you had a great relationship with them, but maybe now you're at a more senior level and maybe now you want a more senior person helping you out. So it kind of like naturally will ebb and flow, I would say, in terms of like the type of person you might ask for that support. But yeah, I think 100%, like I've always told people as well, like me getting my job at Riot was not just something I did by myself. Like I had a whole mentor group. I had my family, I had supportive friends, I had mentors, I had people who cheered me on and supported me through every interview, every rejection. Like there's a whole group of people behind me who helped me get here. It's not just like I got here on my own. So I always like to make sure they get flowers because they helped me through a lot. And the mentors that I have now, I mean, it's honestly a fantastic relationship to have, just being able to have someone who is either willing to listen, offer you advice, sometimes just let you vent about a situation or experience you've had. And for me, that's why I find value in being a mentor and being that person for someone so they can come to you and say like, hey, do you need to listen to you? Do you need to listen to you vent? Do you want my advice? Like kind of offering those options, or somebody like, especially my mentee, when they've come to me to talk about a difficult situation, because I think that's also the important piece of mentorship is being emotionally intelligent, being empathetic, being cognizant of how you provide support for that person. Sometimes, you've had a really bad day and you just don't want to hear any advice, even though it might be the best, perfect advice. Like it's not really a situation in which you're ready to receive that. You just might want to vent and let it all out. So sometimes it helps to have someone who's a professional who can also validate your experience. Like Gretchen was saying earlier, like her mentor talking about the discriminatory experiences she had, having someone say, yeah, that's not okay. You should definitely not be experiencing that, can be really validating and reassuring so you don't feel as alone. So yeah, mentorship is wonderful. And I'm so grateful to have had so many wonderful mentors throughout my career. And I hope to continue to be a mentor to many more new and emerging program managers and other folks as well.
That's fantastic. And I think that's so true what you said about, sometimes it can be the best advice, but sometimes that's just really not what you want to hear. And I think it's important to also like point out, like I've had experiences where it's like, when you are a mentor, it's like, do you want to talk about it? Do you just want me to listen? Do you want advice? Do you just need someone, a shoulder to cry on if that's the case? I remember when I was in my first internship, I dealt with a really bad experience with someone who really just didn't want me to be on a certain project. And I think I cried to my mentor because I was so stressed out because it was my very first internship. So I was just so nervous. Like I felt like I was walking on eggshells, but they really helped me. And luckily this was like a work thing. So that person was someone that I worked with and they were also a mentor to me. So they helped me navigate it, not just by giving me advice, but they actually helped me figure it out at work. So totally understand you there. And as far as like, you know, growing out of and growing into new mentors, I know this one girl, I follow her on Instagram. She's like she was a senior PM at LinkedIn, and now she is an MBA student at, oh my gosh, Stanford GSB. And her mentor now is like the chief product officers of a company. So I hope to like be at that point at some point in my life. Anyhow, so now that you guys have talked about mentorship and you've given us a little bit of insight into how you've gotten into your fields, I would love to know, and I think we'd all love to know, what does a day in the life look like in your job for a senior program manager at Riot and a director of science education programs and community partnerships at Ciencia Puerto Rico?
Yeah, I mean, I can go first if that's all right, Gretchen. I answered this question yesterday. We had like a high school group that was coming through campus at Riot in our office at LA, and we were giving them a tour, and one of them asked me the same question. And I always think it's so funny because I never really, you think the amount of times I've been asked this question, I'd have like an appropriate and like very articulate response, but I never do because no 2 days of my job are the same, but that's also kind of why I love it, because sometimes I'm filming something for one of the videos I'm working on internally. So I might be like, we have a sound stage actually on campus, which is pretty cool. So I might be literally filming all day and like helping people, doing like script supervision, doing production work like you might see on a film or a movie set, because we're filming something for internal use and internal reference. So I might be filming something all day. Sometimes I might be in like 20 different meetings about something. Some days I have a lot of focus time, so I can kind of, you know, focus on work I want to catch up on or prep for the next week. So it really honestly varies, but it also quite heavily depends on the projects I'm working on. Like right now I'm working on, I'd say about 3 to 4 different projects. One is Afrotech, which is like a massive program, I would say, because that will be happening in November, and organizing the different milestones of like the marketing for Afrotech, the budget for Afrotech, like figuring out those big questions and then organizing them into core milestone dates of like, we have to complete this by X date and Y date. That might mean that, hey, I have to block out more focus time this week ahead of my schedules or before meetings come on my calendar, so I can make sure I have time to just sit at my desk and kind of think these through or type some information out. So it really does depend. I try to be quite protective of my calendar, and I have like certain blocks that when anyone tries to book, it'll say like, hey, please ask me before booking, like please ping me because it's my focus time. So I try to put focus time blocks like for 2 or 3 hours every day on my calendar, so I can actually like check up on emails and respond to things and like work on my project documentation. And for like smaller projects, I might maybe just need to be Slack pinging somebody or something like that. Also, there's a Slack bot, which I did not know until I started using Slack for my current job, and it'll like remind you to do things. It's very convenient. I don't know who created it, but I really appreciate it because you can just, maybe this is like a premium feature. I have no idea. I only started using Slack last year, really. But you can just have it remind you like at 9 a.m. the next day to do something. And I use it all the time. So if I have something at the end of the day that I didn't get to, I just tell my Slack bot, remind me at 9 a.m. to respond to this person. Or I can like schedule send messages to send at like 9 a.m. the next business day, so I don't have to mentally think about it if I'm overwhelmed. So yeah, I try to be protective of my schedule. Definitely depends on my projects. It can be either super busy or a little bit more laid back, and I have a more flexibility with focus time, but I try to keep a pretty consistent, I guess, chaotic schedule because I like it that way. I like that no 2 days are the same. I like meeting with people some days and then filming all day the next. Like that's honestly why I like being a program manager, because my schedule is different every day. So yeah, that's how it is, at least for me.
Nice. Actually, I have a lot of similarities with Christina as a program director. And what is similar every day is that I always start with a coffee and answering the first batch of emails that I have, right? And that's kind of the first thing that I do, kind of look at my calendar, the reminders and everything. So I kind of put my mind and focus my mind into what I have to do the rest of the day. But then every day is different. There are some days that I have meetings. I do a lot of remote work. So many of my meetings are online, virtual meetings, but also sometimes I have to go out and meet people in offices, etc. The other thing is that I have meetings with different groups like my team. Every week we have a meeting, but also that team has sub-teams, and then I have other meetings with them for specific projects. One of the things that I want to add that maybe also apply to Christina is that my work is about strategy and planning, right? Like what we do is to oversee the things that are happening with our team and how the projects or the initiatives works, right? In my case. And I love that. That's what I love about my job, because I love strategy. I love to do strategic planning. I love to think about how things will look like and how to think about what is the moonshot, what is our goal, and how to get there. And my scientific training also, people sometimes ask like, oh, you did a PhD, and why did you do a PhD and then ended in this way? I mean, it's a good question. But what I always answer is that actually doing my PhD, being a scientist who observe, ask questions, follow the scientific method is something that it applies to many professions. And now in my position, what I do is to use the best I learn and the difficult things I learned and experiences during my PhD to apply to my job. And I always, think twice. I'm always very, cautious. I observe. And that's part of the strategic planning too. And in my case, what I love about what I do is that every day is different. Usually starts in the emails and usually ends answering some last emails or programming some emails, like Christina mentioned. But the days are very different. And something important, I think, especially for women, it's important to know this type of career like mine is very flexible. What I love about my job is that in my case, I don't have a point to start and a point to end. It's dangerous in the sense that if you don't control and you don't organize yourself, you could be a workaholic and not have a good balance. But if you do well, it's very flexible. For me, that's very nice. I want to have a well-being, a good life. So this is a kind of job that really is very demanding. But if you organize very well, you can do everything you can. And I also have even a small business on the side that is not related, kind of those things. Like I don't have anything else to do, right? But what I mean is that it's always good to look at these kind of professions, because everything that you learn in STEM, even if you do just a bachelor, master, PhD, doesn't matter. It gives you a lot of the skills that you need to do, program director, supervision kind of type of job and things like that.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I mean, I think it's really interesting because I feel like a lot of times as well, like people struggle with setting boundaries in general in jobs. And I think probably roles like yours and mine, Greetchen, are probably in the best position because we're really good at setting boundaries or helping other people set boundaries. So it makes it a little easier to set boundaries for yourself. Like I've been very clear with my team, like after 5 o'clock, like if I respond to something, I might happen to be going to the gym and I just saw your message, but I'm not responding to anything else after 5 o'clock. Like that doesn't happen. I don't respond to things until 9 a.m. the next business day. If I'm on vacation, I'm not responding to anything. So there's a lot of like boundaries you can set too. Yeah, I try to make it very clear to everybody I work with. Like I am here to help you and support you, but I also respect my time, and I also have to be mindful of what I need. And that means not being connected to my job 24/7. Like that's not healthy or sustainable for me. So I love hearing that.
I'm so glad we touched on both of those subjects. And again, incredibly articulated. I am still learning the whole be protective of your calendar thing. I forget to like block out certain times on my calendar. And then sometimes I worry, I'm like, am I being like too inflexible by like, not having enough time available on my calendar? But no, it's just being protective of your time and valuing your time. So I think you could not have said it better. And as far as what Greetchen said, drawing boundaries around your job is so, so important, because even, I landed my internship at my quote unquote like dream company, and I definitely have an amazing job and I love my job, but it's not my whole life. I have a boyfriend, I have a social life, I have hobbies, and I try to like draw the boundaries of I'm not going to answer after 5. Don't ping me at 9 o'clock at night and expect an answer. So really talking about some great topics. But with that, we went a little over, but I am now going to hand it over to Taja and Gia to moderate audience questions. So if you guys have anything, please, feel free to ask. So this is a question for both of you guys. if you knew, knowing what you know now about your careers and where you've gone, Christina, I know you have a very untraditional path to tech. And Gretchen, I know that your job is probably very different than what you thought you'd be doing a long time ago. So, what is the advice that you would give to your high school self regarding career, but also life?
I can start. Yeah, so I was very insecure by that time when I was at high school. And it was, I think, in part because there's a lot of pressure in society for you to decide what do you want to do in your life before you go to college. And I think that's wrong, but I understand that we also had to do something. I mean, we had to apply for a degree or something. What I think I will tell to my high school self is that keep, I mean, first of all, working your insecurities, right? I think that was something that if I can go back, I will do better, try to work better on that. I think I started to manage more later on in college, but it would be great if I did it before. But it was in part because of what I said. And I think the other thing that I will say is that it's good that you were thinking that was nice to try different things. Like I think when we go to college is when sometimes even many people learn what they would like to do when they are in college. It doesn't matter the degree they apply for. Like you can enter for one degree and then later, it could be even in your 4th year, it doesn't matter. It's when you learn because you met something or someone or, And I think this is actually not only for myself, but also for parents. I think parents also have to understand that it's not bad if your kid want to change their degree in the middle or something. They are finding themselves, they're learning what they like. And if that happens, it's better that happens just there before they go to a job that they don't like and they hate. So for myself, when I was at high school, continue the good work. You don't know yet what you want to do, but it's okay. You'll find it.
Oh, I love that advice, Gretchen. It's funny because I don't know why I totally forgot this, but when I was a university student, I switched majors actually. I was a biology major first for like a year and a half. And then I realized like as much as I loved science, I was like, I can't see myself working in a lab, and I definitely can't see myself doing this for 3 more years. Like I gotta get out of this major. Like I need to do something else. And I remember I went to the counseling office and they told me, oh, like you said that you loved reading and you loved writing. Like, have you considered a major in English? And it like dawned on me in that moment that I could just switch my major. They were like, yes, you can switch your major. I was like, I thought I was like locked into it for the 4 years. So I remember switching it. Like I'd say, I think it was like my sophomore year. And I remember when I called my parents, I was so scared that they were going to be so upset or they were going to be like, how dare you? Because all of my friends were like pre-med bio majors. So I was like the one friend that was kind of the black sheep. And my parents, I'll never forget, my dad was so happy. He's like, you always loved reading and writing as a kid. Like, I'm so happy for you. This sounds like an awesome fit. And, we know you're going to do well and you're going to do great. And it was really like awesome. It was like a nice moment. So that's just your story. You sharing that advice reminded me of like, I'm really glad my parents reacted in a way that was supportive and empathetic and not like, what is happening to my child? They were more like, oh, okay. Like you want to just change your major. That's good. And I mean, people have asked me many times, like, why did you major in English? And it's honestly very simple. I love English. So I majored in it. I think if you major in things because other people are pressuring you to, you're going to create a harder path for yourself. And then maybe you'll find a job that you end up doing and you're not super passionate about that either. So yeah, all that to say, I think the advice I'd give my younger self is like, embrace the failure and the rejection. Like you're definitely going to be struggling. A lot more unless you embrace it a lot sooner that it's going to happen and it's okay to make mistakes. Just embrace that you're going to make them and take them as learning opportunities and reframe them as learning moments, and don't take them as like personal attacks on your own intelligence. Just embrace it. Yeah, and I definitely would tell myself to study a lot harder in high school. You definitely need to apply yourself a lot more. I definitely could have done better in high school, and I definitely didn't. And the scholarship money makes a difference. So just study a lot harder, please. Like at least do the best you can with the energy and resources you have, because future you will thank you later when you don't have a lot of student loans to pay off. So just try really hard as you can in high school.
Thank you. Kamala actually has a question from the audience. Where do you see for both panelists, where do you see the STEM industry in 10 years?
I mean, I hope it's a lot more diverse. I hope it's way more diverse than ever. I hope there's lots of women, lots of queer folks, lots of non-binary folks. Like, I hope it's super diverse. I'm manifesting that in 10 years. I hope it looks radically different than where it is now, because that would mean we're only going up. I feel like I think it's already getting more diverse, but I think in 10 years, if it's even more radically diverse, I would be super happy to see more women, more non-binary folks, like just all sorts of gender identities in the industry and being celebrated and uplifted and not seen as like a stereotype, like Greetchen was saying earlier, or being made fun of or like implied that it's bad that you're different. Like, I just hope we're embracing diversity in 10 years and there's more of it, like a whole lot more of it in 10 years. That's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, I see two things. One is that I hope that it will be more diverse, but for me, what that means is that we are breaking systemic barriers. I mean, we need to, usually for many years, we've been working, even myself and my team at Ciencia Puerto Rico, to train minorities and women and girls, but it's not everything doesn't have to be on them. Right? You have to train them, you have to give them the tools, but it doesn't matter if you don't change the systemic barriers that we have right now. So we have to, continue to do that work and change the system. So I hope that in 10 years, systems are more welcoming, more inclusive, and more diverse. Second thing is that to be in the, something that I think is real in the STEM field is that we are developing a lot of technologies that are also will be also a challenge for humans in terms of ethics, in terms of discipline, like how we are managing these things. I think it's important that maybe many people that study STEM don't remember an ethics class or something. I think we have to really do better in that part, not just to do the science, but also to think about the consequences for the lives of other people in all the senses. And I think we will have, I'm not seeing actually in 10 years that will be solved. What I feel is that it will be a challenge, a bigger challenge that we have to keep the eye on. So those are the main two things that I would like to mention.
Thank you so much. I also have a question, I think, to close it out. So you guys are clearly very distinguished women in STEM. I was just wondering, has like networking yourself and kind of making yourself like known helped you like get mentors and like kind of navigate through the STEM industry as women of color?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, networking is always a really interesting scenario because it can be really overwhelming. I remember when I was a student, when I just finished undergrad, and everybody, goes online and tells you, go on LinkedIn, go network. And you're like, what is networking? And you Google it and there's not really a lot of information. It's just sort of like, reach out to people. And you're like, well, how do I reach out to people? What do I say to these people? So it becomes this whole like kind of chaotic feeling of like, how do I network? Because it seems like a very weird like network. What does that even mean? And so for me, what I realized and what I found a lot of success with was just like genuinely reaching out to people. I think I heard this yesterday from a colleague on a panel, and I thought it was a really great way to frame this was when you reach out to people and you say, I want to learn from you versus I want something for you, there's like a very different reaction. If I say, hey, Greetchen, I see that you're doing amazing things. You did a PhD. I would love to learn how you approached that and how you navigated that and pursuing a PhD versus like, tell me what to do for my PhD program. Like, obviously one of those approaches, like the first one, is going to get probably a better response and a more thoughtful response because it shows that I'm interested and I would like to learn more and I want to hear from her because she's a subject matter expert versus just tell me what to do and do work for me. So I think for me, like that's kind of been the approach I've taken is like, hey, when I was interviewing at Meta for our program manager role before I accepted my Riot position, I was like, I reached out to another Black woman who was a program manager at Meta. And I said, hey, I see that you're at Meta. I'm actually interviewing right now with someone there for a program manager role. And I would love to talk with you if it's possible, just to learn about your experiences for like 5 or 15 minutes. And if it's easier, I'm totally open to chatting too. And we ended up exchanging a few messages and then setting up a call, and it was great. And I still actually meet with her monthly, and we still touch base and like see how each other are doing. And even though I didn't take the job at Meta, so it was like a very valuable experience for me. So if you're just authentic and clear, concise, and you want to learn from somebody versus like getting something from them, like a job or a referral or something that takes their time, it's going to probably yield much better results. You can try to say like, oh, give me a referral and see how that works for you professionally. I don't know if you're going to have the success you want. But if you reach out and you say, hey, I see that you're at this position and I'd love to learn from you, like do your research, read their LinkedIn page, read their profile, like do some 5-minute sleuthing on their page and see what you can learn, and then reach out and use that information. Like, hey, I see you went to also a university in the same state I grew up in. Could I talk to you about your experiences? Could you tell me how you chose your major? Things like that. And you'll get, I think, lots of thoughtful responses when folks are available and online to respond.
I like a lot everything that Christina mentioned. What I would like to add to that is about the experience itself. Like, for example, because it could be overwhelming if you are shy, if you feel lonely in the room, is something that you maybe want to do, but you don't know how to do it, or you feel afraid to do it. One of the things that is always good to find, just small conversations with people, general questions, things that you can, start a conversation. And once you do that, you will always find someone to talk and expand. But I think one of the things that we also have to think about, why we want to do network, right? Like networking. We want to learn from people. We want to meet new cool people with different experiences, something new to learn. We maybe want to find a future mentor, which is very important. But also sometimes we forget that we can also find good sponsors. And what I mean with the sponsors is not just people that have some money or something for you. It's people that they're not necessarily your mentors, or you don't have a long relationship with them, but they know something good about you, and they're willing to give your name to someone else and or recommend you for somebody. Oh, I met this girl, I met this person in this meeting, and I know that she did this, and this. You should call her, you should contact her. And that's very important. It's very important in your career to always do networking, because that kind of people you'll find when you do networking. They don't know everything about you, but they know enough to recommend you, to kind of refer you to something that will be sometimes just an after and before and after for you. So they're equally important. And I would like to mention that because sometimes when we start to do networking when we're very young, we don't know the differences of those type of people that you can find doing networking.
Yeah, I also wanted to say too, Greetchen, I think you touched on a really important part about the timing as well of networking. Like I see a lot of people only networking when they want a job, and that's like probably not the best approach. Like you should network before then. That way you can actually socialize and have a conversation with the person versus like, I need a job, help me right now. That might come off as like almost like repelling to the person who might want to help you. A lot of people, like LinkedIn is a networking platform. People by default will likely want to either help you if they're online and available. Like people genuinely want to help. Also be patient that people might take longer to respond, or maybe they just aren't on LinkedIn super often. But I'd say 9 times out of 10, the person you're reaching out on LinkedIn probably wants to help you and is willing to help you if you give them the right context clues about what you need and want from them. So yeah. I loved all that,
Absolutely.
Greetchen.
And you guys touched on 2 incredible lessons that it's taken me, a while to learn, because I've been in the industry for 2 years now. But like Greetchen, the thing about sponsors. So to kind of wrap up, in my experience with like what a sponsor is a sponsor is like one step beyond a mentor, where they're looking out for you in your career when you're not in the room. They're out there advocating for you, championing you. Maybe it's someone at work and they're, advocating for you to get that next promotion or a title change or a raise or a new project. And then from the other perspective of, oh my gosh, sorry guys, I lost my train of thought. ADHD things. Oh my gosh, Christina, you just touched on it. I'm trying to remember what you said. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't go start networking when you're looking for a job. Start way before that, because that's just like I found that like it really does repel people when you're going into an interaction with an agenda. It's just work on the relationships and foster those relationships all the time. Networking is a constant activity. It's not just something we do when we need a job. It's just building your network is a long-term process, and it takes consistent effort over a long period of time. It's not like a one and done type of thing.
So much for coming. If you're interested in talking with these amazing mentors, you can go to BobaTalks or myNetworkHer.org. And yeah, thank you so much for coming.